Hey guys, so this is my first podcast episode. I don't really know what I'm going to call it, but today we're going to be talking about people's inability to think for themselves or use critical thinking and do research on their own, which may spill into other topics. And my guest today is going to be someone known as the Hebrew Hammer on TikTok. He's a good friend, and I hope you guys all enjoy this episode. So let's get into it.
Is what you're saying. It's not
Yeah, or
very
like hold it and like I don't know.
hold it. Oh come on, dude.
I don't know. I mean, I've got mine on a fancy mic stand. I don't know about you.
I got it on. What? Look, this is what I got right here.
I should have
Whatever.
linked. I should have linked you something better. I'm sorry. This is on me.
Yeah, I don't feel like you
Test
prepared me.
test. Oh, test test. One.
Test, test.
I'm looking. I'm looking. So on my other monitor right now, I
Hello,
have.
hello.
I've got audio levels on my other monitor right now. Okay.
I feel like this thing is right in my face. Hold on. That speaker. Okay, hold on. Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
What?
I said.
Okay, can you close the door and leave me alone?
You say no.
No. Okay, I'll talk to her. Okay. My parents are here too, so there's 7 of us in this house right now, and I'm only.
I thought they already. I thought they went to bed.
No, well, my dad's going to bed any minute. My mom stays up as late as I do, so
Oh Jesus, she gonna be listening to you on TikTok at 4 in the morning?
he always does. So
Oh
yeah,
no. Oh no.
I know.
Okay. So our topics for discussion. Our topics for discussion were which way does my gain go? Gain going up, gain going up, gain going
Where is this thing
down.
going?
I'm gonna edit it for YouTube and probably slice some of it up for TikTok. Because
Okay.
this is unfiltered because we don't have TikTok to ban us if we say anything rude.
Oh, great.
So I think what we were going to do is dumbing down of society and lack of people's ability to apply critical thinking and do their own research. With examples of like the basics of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. Like I
I find this thing intimidating. This
I just
microphone thing.
I don't understand how people have the world literally at their fingertips and yet will read a single post like on Twitter and be like, nope, that's it. That's fact. This random person knows more than everything else in the world. Like, I genuinely don't understand. It blows my mind.
Well, the answer is actually quite simple. The younger generation, and I don't blame them. I blame their parents. We're talking about post baby boomers. I don't know what that next generation is called, but that generation, post Vietnam War generation, has taught their kids that self esteem and emotions are more important than reality and facts. And your feelings equals your truth. We hear that all the time, right? You have your truth, I have my truth. And that sliding scale that we're teaching our kids when it comes to reality is it's warping their minds to be able to critically think about situations. So it's no longer about analyzing a situation based on facts and data and then coming to a conclusion. It's looking at a situation, determining how that situation makes you feel, and your ideology then becomes your feelings. Okay, so the left is all about emoting. It's all about how I feel, and you hear it all the time in the way they talk. I feel, I feel, I feel. Well,
I feel
your
this, but
feeling,
what do the numbers say? Well, I don't know. I feel this.
right? Like I feel like Israel is the oppressor. I feel like Jews are part of white supremacy, or whatever nonsense they come up with. It's in total contradiction, in total opposition to the reality of the facts on the ground. And again, anyone that's taught their kids properly, and I'd like to think of myself in that category, one of the things we like to teach our kids is don't make any major decisions when you're emotional, very mad, very sad, very angry, because your emotions have a way of messing with your mind, messing with your ability to analyze the situation, right? It's coming from experience, speaking from 12 step. One of the things they tell you when you're newly sober in 12 step is do not get into a relationship in the first year that you're sober,
Huh.
because you're going through such an emotional roller coaster of being sober and no longer having the substances
You're just gonna
to
go from one
go.
vice to the next.
Right, but you're also, one of the things you do when you abuse substances, abuse alcohol, is you're dulling your senses. You're escaping reality. Reality
Yeah.
is too difficult to deal with on reality's terms, and so you're taking these substances to escape that reality. Once you don't have those substances as a crutch, and you have to deal with reality on reality's terms, it's hard to navigate that when you're experiencing this wide range of emotions. And
Like
so,
my family, alcoholism runs in my family, and I know that each person in my family's done it for different reasons. Like my grandmother did it because she wasn't happy and thought her life wasn't fulfilled. It seemed like she never gave an actual reason, but it was like my grandmother used to sing on cruise ships, so endless supply of men buying her alcohol and booze all day long. I think she made it to liver number 3, and
wow.
then it finally quit on her. But like I remember at one point she was so unhappy with her life that despite having 3 kids already and being married and living with everyone and having a happy family, my dad and his sisters told me that one of their earliest memories is driving with their parents, and their my grandmother, his mother turns around and goes, "Okay, mom's going away for a while and probably never coming back," and they dropped her off at a cruise ship and just on her way, gone. And then she came back years later, like, "Oh yeah, I'm dying. Oh look, a free liver."
Wow.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we see this especially in the complex debates of the day with regards to policies and foreign affairs. And this is highlighted by what's going on with the situation with Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians. Is the crux of all the arguments for the other side, the pro-Palestinian side, is all emotion. I feel like Israel is the oppressor. I feel like Israel is being too harsh. It's not based on facts. We saw this just in the last couple of days with this supposed hospital bombing.
oh, the hospital bombing that was completely. By the way, did you know that the group that originally reported that 500 dead is the same group that's been reporting all casualties from the Israeli bombings? So now we don't know how many of them are accurate because they said 500 dead within 5 minutes of that hospital having the parking lot catch on fire. How much else have they lied about?
Well, I mean, this is the main problem is the Gaza Health Ministry is run by Hamas.
Yeah.
They have no interest in being truthful, and they have every interest in putting out propaganda to skew to their narrative. And that's, it was unsurprising to me, but I know it's surprising to a lot of people on my side to see the mainstream media, which is supposedly owned by Jews and is so pro-Israel,
Yeah.
run with this story. And then, of course, that filters down into the academia, left-wing
And
politics.
all because one dude who has no relation to the IDF or the or to Mossad tweeted something. By the way, did you know that dude doesn't even control his account right now? He got deployed as a reservist. His
Right,
wife runs the account.
right. And as from what I understood, and I could be wrong about this, my understanding is he was basically retweeting what Reuters was reporting, which was, the news on the ground at that moment. But the willingness of
I'm gonna have to
people to
check the
jump.
timeline on that actually, because there I should be able to see when he posted it, like the time. I'm gonna have to find a screenshot from someone in the U.S. posting it though, or retweeting it to see like specific match with the time zone, because I'd be curious to see what the time matches up with Reuters, because we could go back and see what Reuters posted and what time they posted it.
Well, they all posted really quickly
Yeah.
because that was the narrative, and because facts don't matter when you're trying to frame a narrative, emotions do. And this is sort of
It
connecting my underlying point, which
it's
is that they want to be angry at Israel. They want to be angry with the response. And so anything they can find to fit that narrative, they're going to run with. And you see it even a couple days later now, in spite of the overwhelming evidence. And listen,
Oh,
You'll
I'm
never.
still getting people tagging me and stuff all day long saying, "Look what Israel did," and then I go, "Hey, this was proven false." I go, "No, it wasn't. You're just a liar." I'm like, "Okay, well, here's the proof that it was proven false. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you haven't seen it. Here is the factual evidence that it was falsified and that Hamas lied." They go, "That's just Zionist propaganda."
Right,
It's like
right, and
this is from the Palestinian people. The
yeah,
Palestinian people are confirming.
yeah, but this is, it's the Arabs and the pro-Palestinians. I don't expect any more of, because this is the way it's always been. But for supposedly educated left-wing people in college, post-college, to analyze a situation without taking into account the facts. I mean, I've been talking about it, on lives the past couple days, and I say to people, look, we have all our evidence. Okay, you may not agree with it. It could be wrong. But what is your evidence to counter that? Like, show me something.
A random dude's Twitter post and Hamas.
Right. That's it. The one guy's tweet that they're hanging their hat on and everything else. And I asked them, look, we can solve this problem right now. You guys can disprove Israel in a heartbeat. Just go pick up the bomb fragments, hold them up for the camera,
Yeah.
and we'd be able to identify what kind of bomb, what kind of missile, what kind of rocket it was. And then we would know. The fact that you guys are you're willing to parade dead bodies on the screen for your propaganda. You're not willing to show us what the
Yeah.
rocket and the missile was.
'Cause what blows my mind too is like the amount of people that suddenly, like, especially you've seen it. I saw it with the Ukraine stuff. You've seen it with the Israeli stuff. We've both seen it. The amount of people that are just now hearing about stuff, and suddenly they now have an opinion. They see one Twitter video or one TikTok video, and they have an opinion on the entire history of a subject, but only based on the past 5 minutes of what they've seen. And on top of that, you've now got ballistics experts, you've got humanitarian experts, you've got people that know all the culture and history of everything ever in the region, but somehow don't know the basics of world history. Like, you've got these people that just come in as experts out of nowhere. And like, it's weird to me. I don't know. I know you've dealt with this with the Israel and Palestine stuff, and with the Arab world with their propaganda. I don't know if you were able to draw parallels to it though, because I've dealt with this for years with Russian propaganda. Because I've been following stuff from Ukraine since 2008. When I've had my friends there since 2008, when everything in 2014 kicked off. It's been the same thing since then. Russia pushes propaganda based on emotion, not based on fact. They will throw 100 things at a wall until something sticks, and as long as one thing sticks with someone, doesn't even matter if those two people aren't on the same page. As long as they come to the same point, the mission is accomplished. The propaganda has been pushed, and they've
Well,
been
and
doing this for since the inception of their country.
right, and this is the problem when you have. I mean, when we first met on the Russia Ukraine stuff,
Yeah.
and you'll note that when we had those discussions and the history between the two countries came up, I remained silent because I don't claim to have any great knowledge about
Mhm.
the different agreements and who violated what treaty and so
It's
forth.
it
So I
boils
was
down to the
learning from.
exact same argument. It's which,
Right,
well,
no, I
Russia
get
came
it, but
first. Yeah.
the point is I didn't know something. So
Yeah.
rather than pretend like I did based off of a couple weeks of studying it
Mhm.
or hearing TikTok lives or whatever I was able to glean off the internet, I would listen and try to learn so that I could better understand. My whole argument for that is that there's a clear moral distinction between Ukraine defending itself, Russia attacking. I'm not pro
Yeah.
Russia, never have been. I know Russia's bad. It's a little shocking to me that when I was growing up, it was the Republicans fighting the Russians and the
Oh,
Democrats who
yeah.
were supporting them. And now we've kind of flipped, and the Democrats are the pro-Ukraine and the Republicans are not. And it's
You've got Republicans.
weird.
There's dudes on Twitter that say their whole thing is I'm a patriot. Yet they're going to Russia to visit Russia. They're saying how
Right.
great Russia is. They're praising a country. Did you know that Russia has state sponsored television commercials that openly
Oh, yeah.
preach for the death of Americans?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing
I'm
is,
such a patriot. I support this.
yeah, but when you have a democratic nation that has certain standards they have to live by versus an authoritarian regime that does not answer to its people, they can lie about everything and there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that democratic countries don't engage in misinformation and
Oh yeah.
propaganda,
No.
but for the most part, if that propaganda and misinformation comes out, there are consequences in a democratic nation. People get pissed, they vote you out, they don't donate money, etc. There's no
Mhm.
consequences if someone catches Putin lying. He'll just move on to the next thing. And so,
Or when you've been doing it so long that people don't even have the ability to figure out that you're lying.
no, and it's well, and because they become very good at it, their second nature. I mean, the
Yeah.
thing with the Israel-Palestinian issue is it's the same thing.
Mhm.
They lie about everything,
Yeah,
and it
like it
becomes
it blew my
very
mind.
challenging for people on my side because you're constantly playing defense. And that's why I've been trying to help people along on these TikTok lives to help them gain control of a conversation. Because as
What
soon as they throw one lie out and you refute it, they move to the next lie and the next lie.
what's
And you're
that what's
always,
that phrase? It's a lie will make it a 3 times around the world before the truth has even gotten out of bed.
yeah, I think
Like
that was Mark
something
Twain
like
who
that.
said that.
But yeah,
Yeah, I
like
think Mark Twain
it
said it.
it blew my mind. Like I see my thing is kind of like you said silent on Ukraine and Russia. I very well knew the world history aspect. I didn't really know the religious arguments, so I didn't comment on those. Like I knew the archaeological arguments like that you make though on why Israel was there first, why they have the rights to the land. I knew all that stuff, but I felt like, hey, I do support Israel, but it's not really my place. Nothing's going on. Like it's just business as usual. Shit kind of sucks on both sides, but it's still business as usual. Not really my place. I don't know if a Jewish person would even get offended if I started going off about this stuff. So I kind of just didn't say anything. But then as soon as everything kicked off, I started hearing this propaganda. It's like, oh my God, I'm fucking worlds are colliding. I'm living through the same fucking style of propaganda. And people are just unwilling to do the most basic research. Like,
Well, and
hey,
this is perfect segue because you have to remember that the Arab world was allied with the USSR.
mhm,
So they learned their propaganda practices from the USSR. The USSR was in Egypt. They had advisors in Egypt for the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
mhm.
They were behind it because the
I mean, they
Russians,
still partner with them. They partner with Iran. They
well,
partner with Hamas.
right, because they see them, Russia wants to ally with the people that are anti-Western. I mean,
Yeah,
that just makes perfect sense. So who better than the Iranians, China, and the Arabs? And it makes it especially good for them because obviously you have the Arabs in conflict with Israel. And so Israel is a symbol of the West in a region where there's, I mean, you look at the map, there's nothing remotely
yeah,
close to Western until you get to Europe. Obviously, it's not that far geographically, but you have to cross the Mediterranean Sea to get to Greece or
yeah.
Spain. But in that region, surrounded by Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, like there's not a Western civilization anywhere close to Israel. And so Israel is this,
Even the closest ones to U.S. and Western style standards use slave labor, and no one cares
right,
about that.
right, right.
Like, hey, we're westernized. I see you have slaves over there. Yeah, don't worry about that. Like, I know.
No, it's a confluence of uh good. Listen, for me, and I think this is really where the left has failed in its most dramatic way. I mean, there's a lot of problems with the left, but it starts with the most basic concept of the inability to distinguish between good and evil. And they can't distinguish between good and evil because they don't believe that good and evil exist. They believe that bad people only exist because of the circumstances they were put in by their oppressors. If it's black people, it's white people's fault for slavery. If it's Arabs, it's the Jews' fault. If it's the Russians, it's the Ukrainians' fault. The people that are responsible for putting evil into the world aren't at fault. They are just motivated. They are pushed to this point where they
Yeah,
have to act
that's
this
that's
way.
the big ones that they've been pushed. It's like really, they've been the ones to like specifically with Israel and Palestine. It's like the Palestinians were pushed. It's like really, they've been the ones pushing for God knows how long. It's not Israel's fault that Palestine keeps pushing and then losing. Like I like I've tried to explain to people. I don't necessarily agree that if you start a war and you lose, you should lose some of your land. I get it. I don't necessarily agree. But at the same time, Okay, what was the last thing I said?
Oh, you're a lot louder now than you were.
Oh,
Yeah, you're much louder now.
oh,
I
sorry.
have no idea. I have no idea. This microphone is so high. Like I'm so short.
um,
Like coming up to my nose. Like look at this thing. I have to like sit
dude, we gotta
straight
get
up.
you like a fancy mic for your phone that connects to the iPhone, so when you're on TikTok live, you can get real close. You can talk.
You know, those people have those little microphones that they hold up. I think it's really funny. I think they look ridiculous, but it makes me laugh. I
I
don't know.
I have this. I have this one. This was a Bluetooth, like it's an actual lav mic. I do have the little one that looks like a little actual microphone that you hold and it just like it gets
Yeah,
really
it looks it makes me laugh. I mean, I think it looks ridiculous, but
I give it to my dog and I let them sniff it
you
because
gotta
it just
understand,
sounds funny.
I don't really take this stuff that seriously, and
Uh,
only in these last couple of weeks,
mhm.
I wasn't going to live that much except with world news, and I
Yeah.
rarely ever do my own lives because I get suspended almost every time I go live, no matter what. Now it's weird because as a guest, I get away with
A
insane
lot.
a
Oh
lot, but
my
when I'm
god.
hosting my own live,
Dual Dab has gotten away with so much. Oh
yeah,
my god. He has
he's
gone off the rails recently.
yeah, he's really becoming a lot more aggressive in his language. Listen, it makes me laugh. I crack up. I don't doesn't bother me, but
and then,
definitely.
and then World News coming in, drive my car, wear toilet.
I don't know where that joke came from. I wasn't there for that live. I love
It was the dude who it was an African dude who was talking about how it wasn't a third world country. I think it was South Africa, and he was talking about how good he was and how smart he was. And that he said I read many book. So I was like, how many book? He just kept going off with how. Oh, it was good.
yeah, I don't yeah, I really took a I was pretty much only going on world news's lives, a few Israeli lives here and there, but I was
Mhm.
calming down, and now problem is I see so many people on our side not doing a good job, and there's so many Arabs, so many
Oh,
pro-Palestinians, so many
that's what
leftists.
we were talking about. Like people that like they don't know how to deal with the lie because you get used. People will hammer you with falsified info, false claim, and you can give them the fact, and they just blatantly deny it. And the problem is, the people in the comments and the people viewing don't know what to believe. But if they hear 9 angry Arabs yelling at one Jewish person, they're gonna go, "Well, it's 9 versus 1, and those 9 people are on the same page. Clearly, they must be the right ones." It's like
Well, that's why I go into the
75 years of
live.
oppression. Again, who was oppressing who? Really? Are we just gonna forget about when the Turks and the Jordanians were in charge of this land and you didn't give a fuck? No one
Nah,
complained about oppression then.
and that's why I go in because I know how to control a conversation. I know how to not allow them to gang up and bully. I know how to put the ball back in their court and force them to play defense. And it's like
I mean,
I say to
you've
people
seen
all
me
the
do
time.
the same thing with the Russian
Yeah,
supporters.
yeah, I tell the people all the time on my life, listen, if you don't believe me, that's fine. Go fact check it with an independent source. Don't use a Jewish source. Don't use an
Yeah,
Arab source. Don't use a Palestinian source. Don't use an Israeli source. Go to Britannica. Go to worldhistory.org. Tell me where I'm saying something that's factually incorrect.
I mean,
And if I'm being wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. But again, this ties into what is the basis of the entire Palestinian argument? It's not fact based. It's not based on history.
there's two. It's the two main points are we were here first, and the basis of that one is we were related to the Philistines, which every archaeologist and historian will tell you outside of Palestine that is patently false. And then the second one is you left.
Right. Well, and the third one
Oh,
is
yeah,
you're being mean to us,
yeah.
basically.
Sorry.
You're being meanies, right? Without any acknowledgement of what led up to that. Like
Hundreds of years of
you
Arab
gotta understand,
slaughter of Jews in the
they
conquest.
don't have history books there, real ones, right? They have what their parents told them. So I
Kind of like
ask people,
the original oral Torah almost.
yes, but the oral Torah, at least you know, it's what we have been passing down generation to generation.
And then
It's
someone
our
actually finally realized maybe we should write this down.
right, but theirs is all nonsense. It's made up, and they talk about, they. I've been sending out some pointers to people about how to address certain attacks that they make, and they say, "Well, it's oppression for 75 years." So I'm like, "Okay, well, let's break this down." from 48 to 67, Jordan had the West Bank, no
Yeah.
Jews. Egypt had Gaza, no Jews. So please identify for me how the Jews were oppressing you when there were none amongst you. You had the old
Mhm.
city, you had all of Jerusalem. Then we get to 67 and Israel took back the West Bank. Okay, there were no settlements, there were no checkpoints,
Mhm.
no one was forced to leave. People were offered Israeli citizenship if they wanted it. The checkpoints didn't start until the 1990s. So people don't know this,
You mean
especially the younger
shortly
ones.
after Hamas started?
Uh, right after they started the first Intifada, that's when the checkpoints started. But people
Shocker.
don't realize that in the 70s, starting in the mid to late 70s through the 80s, the flow of people in and out of the West Bank and Gaza Strip was unrestricted.
Yeah.
Okay, Jews were going into the West Bank, going into the Palestinian towns. You could go in and out of
I
Gaza.
I have friends who went there plenty.
Yeah, and these restrictions all began after something. It all started with the first Intifada,
It's like
the
people getting mad
wall,
that TSA is more strict now after 9/11.
right? But
Which is no shit. Like, what did you
right, but
expect to happen?
right, but because their parents and their grandparents have been lying to them for so long, they either don't know or they're counting on people not being able to correct them. That's why they hate when I come in because they know I know all this stuff. So, like, you could go into the
This is
West Bank.
Western propaganda.
Yeah, but it wasn't because I in 1988 when I was 13 years old, I had my bar mitzvah in East, what they call East
Yeah, I
Jerusalem.
remember you were showing the video of it, and you were actually showing like you paused it when it was on when you guys were someone was panning out with the camera over the hillside, and
Yes,
you're like, "Hey, look, that's this, that's this, that's this."
yes. It wasn't a thing. So all these restrictions, these
Mhm.
oppressions happened as a result of something significant that happened to Israel. But before that, where was the oppression in the 1980s when you could go in and out of the West Bank? There were no checkpoints. It
Mhm.
was back and forth flow of travel. And I'm telling
So I
people,
I know one of the arguments that is the oppression happened because Israel took land during the war, and again that goes back to my argument. Well, if Mexico invaded the U.S. and they invaded Texas and we took some of their land, I may not agree with it, but tough shit. You lost the war. You lost your territory. Like, oh
well,
well.
that also undercuts any argument they may have about a two-state solution and living peacefully. Because if you really wanted a two-state solution, like you got to look at the
Oh, the original two-state solution when the Israelis were like when the first agreement was signed and the Israelis got all the shittiest land in the entire area.
got the whole desert. They
Yeah,
got desert,
it's
and
just sand.
they got the Jordan Valley and the Galilee. But if you look at the 1949 armistice line
Mhm.
map, where you see how much Jordan had and how much Egypt had, and you're like, that is supposedly what you're fighting for today. So the reality is, if it
Jordan
wasn't
had
good enough,
quite a bit more than Egypt, if I recall correctly, too.
Jordan had a ton. They had the whole
Yeah,
West Bank, the whole Jordan Valley.
yeah.
So if that amount of land wasn't acceptable, then you really don't want a two-state solution. You're using that as a
Mhm.
red herring for what you really want, which is
No
you just
Jews.
want to take over all of Israel and just be honest about it. Like, stop pretending like this is about living peacefully and coexisting. Now, some of them are. Some of them are like, no, we want the land back. It's ours. You shouldn't be there. And at least those people, I don't agree with them, but I can respect them for being honest because
Yeah,
ultimately, that's the majority of them. That's their real goal. They don't want two states. They want their own state that's Jew
and
free.
I love the dog whistle of we're just against Zionists, we're not against Jews. But sure enough, every single time we have a debate, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, an hour in, what happens?
Well, they slip up and they start
Yeah,
talking about the Jew.
yep,
They start making pro-Nazi,
yep.
pro-Hitler. And here's the question I ask all of them, which is they can't answer it. If this is about Zionists and not Jews, then how come all these attacks worldwide, the firebombing at the Molotov cocktails that were thrown at the synagogue in Berlin a couple nights ago, people painting Jewish stars on businesses in Berlin and Russia,
Or the what was it? There was people that put up a flag and a bunch of flowers at the Israeli embassy in Ireland, and a bunch of
yeah,
Palestinian followers had their children stomping on them, wearing
right,
Palestinian flags.
right. So if the issue is Zionists and not Jews, how come only Jewish Zionists get hassled and attacked? Christian Zionists, which there's
Or the 2.5 million Arabs that live there peacefully.
Well, listen, there's 15 million Jews in the world. I don't know how many Christians are in the world. I think it's a couple billion, 2.5 billion. Let's just say 10% of them. Let's just say 10%, though I think it's much higher. 10% are Zionists. That's 250 million people. That's what, 18 times the population of Israel. How come Christian Zionists never get attacked? How come they never get hassled? How come
I've
they never
I've
get
seen a
arrested?
lot of recent arguments. I've seen from people that I 100% don't believe are Christians, nor are they in Israel. But they've like, oh, I used to live in Israel. I've been to Israel. I used to get spit on by Jews when I was there. And I'm like, I don't believe you for a second because I've seen the videos of that happening and all those people immediately being arrested.
Well, and first of all, you're talking about a very small, ultra Orthodox sect, which
Yeah.
don't
Like
represent
you're crazy
broader
idiots in
community.
every group.
And they're spitting on the ground. They have this thing where they think, and by the way, I think it's wrong. I think it's silly. It's actually worse than silly. It's wrong, and I condemn it. But they have this belief that when they walk by a church, they need to spit on the ground. So anyone that's saying they're getting spit at, look, if it's true, if it's happening to you, I'll be the first person to condemn it because it's wrong. It's not a moral, it's not an ethical way to behave. Does that mean Israel's perfect if they don't have conflict? No. Anytime you bring in
It's in
a
fucking
diversity,
society. Every society has their issues.
every time you bring in a diversity of people from different backgrounds, cultures, ethnic groups, religion, there's going to be some friction. But the question isn't, so they frame the question wrong because leftists are always shooting for this utopia. The question isn't, are there problems? Because there's always going to be problems in a multicultural society. The question is, are those problems common or are they rare?
And are
I
they
make this
so bad that they're legitimately preventing society from moving forward?
say the same thing about the United States. People want to say the United States is so racist. We're the least racist country in the world.
Yeah,
We have
like
three.
the people that say this have clearly never been outside the United States.
Well,
I
it's
went
not
to
just
Pol.
that. Just think about it. Just think about it numerically. There's 350 million people in the country. Let's say everybody, everybody has 10 interactions a day, which I think is very light, right? But let's just
Yeah,
keep it whole numbers. That's 3.5 billion interactions in a given day. And when we hear about racism on the news, we're all like, wow, that sucks. That's terrible. That's wrong. Because it's so rare, they have to, if it was common all the time, they wouldn't be covering it,
yeah, it
right?
gets clicks, it gets attention because it's an anomaly. But if you can make that push that anomaly, you can make it seem like it's more common. Like
Right.
I people don't understand like places like Japan, very nice people, very openly racist. Like they have signs on bars that say no black people. I know a guy that went to a bar, another service member. They a couple of them they went to a bar. One of the guys was black. They didn't see the sign. The bar kicked them out. Their Japanese friend showed up. Was like, I will talk to them. Some Japanese police officers showed up. They complained to the Japanese police officers. The Japanese police officer was like, well, what? They've got a sign. It just says no black people. Just don't go in. It's like,
Right.
or
Yeah. So
Poland. I heard the N word more times in 5 minutes
oh,
than I
you'll
had
hear.
in the last in the last year.
Have you noticed how many Arabs and pro-Palestinians come up and use the N-word at some point in the conversation where they get mad? In
Yep.
Lebanon, it's commonly used. Like the fact of the matter is, we report it in this country, it becomes big news because it is so rare, because it is so outside the norm that people are shocked that it needs, and then it's brought to us and we watch it and we're like, that's crazy. But the reality is, the real reality is, the amount of racism in this country is going down every year progressively. Now, does that mean it never happens? That there aren't
No.
outliers? Same thing with
I
Israel, of
know of
course.
racists in the military. Like there's outliers in every group, but again, they're outliers. It's the definition of very, very small minority that nobody likes and no one gives a fuck about.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is what the pro-Palestinian, the Arab side is trying to portray Israel as. They're trying to take the outlier and make it the norm. But the reality is, these are all people outside, right? If you talk to Christians inside Israel, and we have a few that come up on our lives, they will tell you they're very happy. Will they say it's perfect, that it's problem
Yeah.
free? Of course not. I wouldn't say that here. But you don't see a mass migration of Muslims and Christians out of Israel. The Christian and the Muslim population of Israel continues to grow exponentially, slow and steady, slow and steady. If it was so bad, they would leave. And for the Muslims, it's easy. They could just go live in the West Bank. But they did a poll amongst Israeli Arabs, And would you rather live under Israeli control or Palestinian Authority control? It was 93% said they would rather live under Israeli control. Of course.
I had someone in a live the other day. They were like, I brought up the fact that there's 2.5 million Arabs living in Israel, and they were like, "No, those are Palestinians in Israel." I was like, "Really? So there's no Arabs from any other country that go to Israel? Like all Arabs are only Palestinians?" She goes, "All those people are Palestinians that were in land that Israel took over and made them Israeli citizens." I was like, "Do you realize how insane that sounds?" And then I got kicked from the live.
Well, some of them do self-identify as Palestinians. That's
But
true.
I'm saying
And
2.5 million, all 2.5 million were just
it's
essentially
about
kidnapped Palestinians, is what she said.
from the data and the polling I've seen, again, this is them trying to overblow it. I've seen it's about 20% self-identify as Palestinians, and the rest of them are perfectly comfortable being called Israeli Arabs. Now, listen,
Yeah.
if there's an Arab in Israel and he wants to be called a Palestinian, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. But the
Yeah,
fact of the matter
but
is,
to imply that
nobody.
all of those Arabs have been kidnapped Palestinians, like that's insane.
Okay, so let me give you a quick story. In 1948, leading up to the War of Independence, the Arab High Command, and it's documented in books, letters from the people that were there. The Arab High Command told the Palestinians, or actually they weren't even Palestinians, they were Arabs, leave your houses. We're going to come in. We're going to wipe out the Jews. In 2 weeks, you'll be back in your houses. Okay. And the Jews begged them to stay. Don't leave. Because having the Arabs there would add legitimacy to the democratic nature of the state. So there was 750,000, right? They love to talk about you kicked out 750,000 Arabs, right? I'm sure you've heard him say that number
Mhm.
before. Here's the problem: 150,000 Arabs stayed in Israel. If Israel wanted to ethnically cleanse them, we could have done that during the war, just push them out. But you know what we did instead? We gave them citizenship. Like, where do these people think the Israeli Arabs or the Palestinians, whatever they want to call themselves, living
It's
in Israel
it's
now?
the same
Where
logic behind the argument of Israel's just wiping out Gaza. They're just trying to murder everything. It's like, really, if they really wanted to, you're very easily able to look up the weapons they have in their arsenal. Gaza would have been leveled in one day. It is not a very big strip of land. It does not take much to level the entire thing. Your argument of, well, they did it because they could, does not hold any ground.
right? And so we gave these people citizenship in 1948. They were offered, some of them were offered the chance to come back in 1951 and apply, get citizenship, and that's where they come from, because they were in the land. Now, if Israel was so oppressive and so terrible, why didn't we make those Arabs that were still living in the land non-citizens, like green card holders, right? Permanent residents without voting rights, but some other rights. No, we gave them full rights. They started participating in society. 47% of all new doctors in Israel are Arabs. 47% of
I
all
had some that tried to tell you, like, no, what you hear is a lie. Arabs aren't allowed to do that stuff. They're not allowed to get educations and stuff. I actually pulled up a website that showed that Arabs in Israel are not required to take college entrance exams, and they just
right.
said it was a lie. Like, here
What are
is,
you gonna
you made a claim. Can you back up that claim? No, you can't. Okay, well, here I am backing up my counterclaim. Oh, that's just propaganda. Cool. Well, I have evidence and you don't. But again,
right?
it circles back to the original topic. People are so unwilling to think without emotion that they can't. It's all appeal of emotion. It's all straw man arguments. It's all logical fallacies. It just repeats and repeats, and it's an endless vicious cycle because people have the world at their fingertips, and they
Oh
can't
yeah.
even look a single source up. Or what's your source? Sean King on Twitter.
Well, and that's the other thing they do is you got to understand the Arab world, the Muslim world is really big on conspiracy theories, like really big on conspiracy theories.
Mhm.
And so they
The whole
believe,
world controlled by Jews.
right? No, they actually believe it,
Yeah, no,
right?
I got flooded today. I countered that. I brought someone said it was the Zionist media that was saying um that Israel did not bomb the hospital, and I brought up the whole thing of like, hey, if all of this media was saying that Israel did bomb the hospital, you're claiming that they didn't, but the fact is they all claimed they did. Why would the Zionist controlled media be making the Zionists look bad. And they go, well, it's because both sides are controlled by Zionists. And I was like, so does that mean that your side is also Zionist? Like, what is the logic here?
There's no logic, and that's the problem with emotions. Emotions, by definition, are irrational. Okay? They are not, when you are jealous, angry, sad, you're not necessarily being rational. And logic dictates rationality. You need to be rational to believe in logic, in facts. And so they allow this emotional pull at their heart to override their ability to think critically. Now, I think for some of them, it's conscious, right? They are actively trying to suppress the factual information
Yeah,
because they
because
have a
my whole worldview has been shocked to the core because I'm now reading something that everyone else says is true, but I don't think it is. It can't be true.
right. And for another portion of them, I believe it's they were brought up in a way where facts are not the primary motivating factor for how you learn. So I think for a lot of them, they don't know the difference. Like, so one of the arguments I have when we're talking about Islam, when I'm arguing with Muslims, is the difference between fact and faith. I'm sure you've heard me make this argument
Yeah,
before.
faith is literally the belief without proof.
Right. And that's what a lot of religion is, right? I'm a Jew.
Yeah.
Okay, I cannot prove to you factually that a lot of the things in the Torah happen. I can't prove to
Yeah.
you.
There's some things you can prove. And a lot of people use that though. They'll go, there's some things that are factually like there's some stuff in the Bible that is factually documented and accurate. Not a lot, but there are some. People go, that's proof that the entire Bible is real. It's like, no, that's just individual sections. I could prove this event and this event. What about all these other events? They go, well, if those two were true, then all of it's true.
Right. And it's no group more so than Muslims has this problem of separating fact and fiction. And you have to understand, and you hear it all the time when Muslims talk, they'll say Islam is the truth, the only truth,
The only
truth.
way.
Right. You'll never hear a Jew say that. You know what a Jew will say? Judaism is our truth. That's what we believe. We don't expect you to believe the stories in our book. I don't expect you as a Gentile to be like, hey, Hebrew Hammer, this whole Moses went up to Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. He didn't have any food. He didn't have any water. Like, did that really happen? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But I'm not asking you to believe it because it's not part of your theological core.
Yeah,
it's part of my theological core.
I believe some things in all the books. There's factually proven events, and then something like that. For example, it may be your faith, but I may say, hey, a human being physically cannot survive that long without food and water, and you would be like, cool, that's your belief.
Right, but I showed this to you in the last couple of days when I started bringing up the moon thing because I wanted to understand.
I knew it was I didn't really know about the flat earth part. I knew the basics of I've heard of the moon thing, but until you showed me and actually started asking people in front of me, I didn't think they actually believed that.
No. And that's the thing. If they were to just say, and I tell them this all the time, every time I have this discussion, I say, look, if you were to say to me, look, I believe the moon was split in half and that it was put back together, I'd be like, cool, the discussion's over. Because
they dance around it though.
Right. No, that's your belief system. But then they follow it up with, oh, I know it happened. It's a fact. Right. And then once you start talking to me about facts, well, now we get into provability. Now we get into, scientific data.
There's these billion pages on why you're wrong.
Right. No. And it's wild. And like NASA, I don't know if you know this, NASA. So there was an internet meme that was running around Facebook where some Muslim scholar put up an interview of a NASA scientist who was talking about cracks on the Earth, on the moon, that the moon had cracks. And they were like, see, this just proves from NASA that the moon was split in half.
So they're using that's for reference to, for anyone listening, that's exactly a logical fallacy. It's two logical fallacies. It's the straw man argument and appeal to expert. Right, misconstruing both of what they say.
He never said it was split up because they've said.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They use appeal to an expert. They'll reference an expert, take a portion of what they said, even if it's just an opinion. It's not a fact. Even if he didn't say a fact and he just said an opinion, they will take that and they will wave it way out of context and then
Oh
they'll
no,
use
no,
the
no, no,
straw
no,
man
no, no.
argument.
This is even beyond that because I watched the video. They sent it to me. I'm like, send me the video. I want to watch it. And the guy said, which is true, you can see cracks on the moon where the fault lines have overlapped themselves.
Yeah.
He never said split. He never said split in half. He just said there's cracks. So it became such an internet meme of Muslims coming out and saying, see, the moon was split in half. NASA actually had to release a press release. They actually had to release something for public consumption where they said,
I'm gonna have to put this on the screen right now. I'm gonna have to go look for it and put it on the screen.
contrary, I'll find it for you. Email. It says, contrary to what's going around the internet. I mean, I'm paraphrasing
Yeah.
poorly, but the gist of it was the moon was not split in half, and anyone that's saying that on the internet is wrong. There's no scientific evidence to back it, and it's like the fact that they had to come out and release something like that was bizarre in and of itself, right? That anyone even doubted it. But then even after releasing it, the same people that use that NASA scientist as proof will now come back and say, well, we don't listen to NASA when it comes to this. Like it's such selective.
Yeah. It's the it's a source when you want it, but the second it goes against you, gone out the window.
100%. And
I see that all the time. Like you'll see Russian supporters using stuff on Wikipedia, but the second you say something from Wikipedia, they go, "Oh, well, that's not true. Wikipedia can't be trusted." And I go, "Well, here's this great thing. When you see a source online, like on Wikipedia, you can click on it. It has like a
Right.
little number next to it. You can see what the reference is. Then you can go to that source and verify it for yourself." So, like, my perfect example is showing who invaded who first, showing that Russia invaded Ukraine first. They go, "Well, you can't trust Wikipedia." Then they go, "Well, here's proof that Ukraine has killed a bunch of people in the Donbass region." Fun fact, if you go to the numbers provided for how many people were killed, guess who provides those numbers?
Like it's so obvious to me that Russia invaded. They were saber rattling. They already took Crimea.
Oh,
They've been talking about wanting to take Ukraine. Like it's
did you know, by the way, that the reason we found out that they had officially invaded, because they had denied it, but the reason we found out they had started their invasion was because a Russian soldier inside one of their vehicles, an armored personnel carrier, geotagged himself 14 miles inside the Ukrainian border on Instagram in full uniform in an area that Russians had said, "Oh, it's only the breakoff groups, the LPR and the DPR forces. Those are the only people in those regions." And everyone went, "What's that?" And that dude just post disappeared. That man was never seen again. They made a new rule that no Russian soldier is allowed to have their cell phone on them. And then, boop, oh, suddenly Crimea's taken over.
yeah. I mean, I think it's like to me, the two issues are so parallel.
And what a shocker that
Crimea-
Russia's supporting Hamas openly.
Well, no, not at all. And it's
I mean, I'm being ironic, but yeah, like
oh yeah,
you're
no, of course.
satirical. Yeah.
Yeah, they the Arabs have done a pretty good job. I'll give them credit of changing the narrative into them being from that land and the European Jews being the invaders. And it's the same tactic that Russia's using, which is basically it was never Ukraine. It's always been Russia. It should always be a part of Russia. And
Yeah,
it's
even though they literally split from Ukraine to start Russia. Like,
right. And like to me, the two situations are so morally clear. Russia is in the wrong. The terrorists are in the wrong. Hamas is in the wrong. And it becomes frustrating to chat with people who just
I have you
don't
seen the
see
new
that so
argument, by
clearly.
the way, from people on both sides, or from people who support Russia and Hamas? It's, "Oh, the Palestinians are being attacked by Israel. That's why you shouldn't support Ukraine because, or you shouldn't support Israel because Israel's the ones attacking." And then they're like, "Man, it's weird that you support Ukraine." I was like, "Okay, cool. So if you think Israel's bad and you're saying they're the same as Russia, shouldn't you say that all of this stuff is bad? Like, what's the deal?"
Yeah, there's certainly no consistency. And listen, when you have no shame, when you are very comfortable being dishonest, there's nothing you won't say. And we're not like that,
Mhm.
right?
Like,
I won't come out and say something that's a lie just to
Mhm.
make my point. or
I don't publish videos and stuff unless I've done my research on it. Like when I do my,
Of course.
you've probably seen some of my debunking videos, but like you've seen them on TikTok. When I post them on YouTube, I will have a list of sources. Will have like 30 to 50 sources because I want, hey, I'm making this claim, but I'm going to back it up. Here is the information. If you don't believe me, please go to these sources. You could see where I got my information. You could see the information for yourself. You can verify it for yourself. I'm going to provide you with the things, unlike the other side is doing, to show that what I'm saying is true, because I don't want to make an ass out of myself or misrepresent something or make you
Problem is-
less educated.
Yeah, but what do you do? And this is the great question that you and I face, and that we've not been able to answer, and there may not be an answer for it, which is, what do you do when you're talking to people who reject all your sources? Like, what do you do?
I
when
usually
you
go to something
provide-
from their sources that slips up and they don't like. I love to do this one. The Russian supporters will say Russia's pushing back Ukraine. The Ukrainians are retreating. Russia's winning. Ukraine should just give up. And I go, really? Well, here is this Russian general currently on the front lines complaining that the Ukrainians outnumber them 3-1 and that his troops are currently withdrawing. And they go, well, that's not. I don't believe that. It's like, really? That's your own guy. That's the guy that you were praising a week ago. That you're saying he's an NOBL perfect factual source. So I'm giving you what he is saying,
Right.
and now you don't want to follow it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I use Al Jazeera a lot, especially with the Arab conquest.
Yep.
And they've actually done a very thorough history of the 73 war that's very accurate. And I'll make videos and I'll say, look, it's Al Jazeera. And some of them will be like, look, they're just Zionist puppets, because they think that any government, and Qatar doesn't have good relations with Israel. So it's not like UAE or Bahrain or Morocco. Like Qatar was not part of the Abraham
Qatar
Accords.
doesn't do well with most people.
No. But they'll say, "Oh, that's Zionist-controlled media. You guys control Al Jazeera too." So you get to a point where they will deny everything. It doesn't matter. We're seeing this with the hospital thing now.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what evidence you show. The fact that the crater is like this big.
It's
You know what I
it
mean?
was measured. It's 1.1 meters squared.
Okay, so 1.1 meters squared is 3.5 feet. It was like this. It's not much.
Yeah.
It's not a big.
Like
you know, it
the big comparison thing right now is people were Jason Hinkle, Jackson, super anti-American, pro-Russia patriot on Twitter, constantly just shilling for subscribers. He showed a picture and a video of a Hamas rocket that someone got on video landing and hitting a car and damaging a car on the wall behind it and making a tiny little hole on the ground. This was day one. He was going, this is what a Hamas rocket does. And then someone cut it together and they cropped his tweet and they said ... Then they cut to the tiny little crater left by the one in the parking lot. Wow,
Yeah,
it looks the same.
Yeah, we see these videos of Israel bombing buildings, and the whole building falls down, and all of a sudden they bombed, and there's like the funniest things.
The argument there is everyone's a ballistics expert now, and they say, "Oh, the fireball was too huge." Well, as someone who knows about munitions and stuff, and I even asked one of my friends who's dealt with stuff like this. He deals with rocket munitions and stuff in the Marine Corps. When you fire a rocket, usually they have a propellant to get them to a certain elevation and distance,
Right.
and then they stop and it just free falls there. When you launch something and within the first 5 seconds of flight, it crashes into the ground, there's still a lot of propellant there. Boom,
Right.
big fireball.
Right, but even amidst the fireball, there were cars in the parking lot that were totally undamaged.
Yeah. They
If
didn't.
Israel
There was
dropped
a
the bomb,
single
that-
car that flipped over. That was it.
Yeah, if Israel dropped a bomb in that parking lot would be literally a parking lot with no cars.
The bomb they compared it to is a U.S. JDAM bomb, by the way, which that parking lot would be gone.
Yeah, and JDAM is just, from my understanding, JDAM is just the system attached to the munition.
It's a dumb bomb that
that's
has
it.
a smart system on it.
Right, but the JDAM isn't the bomb itself. And Israel's been using bigger munitions, bigger bombs, bigger rockets, bigger missiles.
Or the people that
And
don't know
that-
that even like people were saying, oh, the fireball was too big, and I go, okay, well, cool. Like Nick brought up, here's the list. They're like, Hamas just has tiny rockets. Like, do you realize that Hamas has an entire arsenal of weapons? Just because they don't have a lot, they go, well, if they had it, they would have used it. I was like, okay, that's you saying that if they had it, they would have used it is the equivalent of
They
saying
have been.
Russia had the bigger bombs. I'm
They
saying,
have been.
hang on. The what I'm saying is their argument is that's all they would be using. They wouldn't use anything else. And I go, cool. Your argument there is they have the bigger one and they have a lot of it, so they're going to use just that. That's like saying Russia doesn't have nukes right now, because if they did have nukes, they would be using them. But we clearly
Right.
know Russia has nukes, but it wouldn't be as advantageous if you just used all of your fucking best weapon immediately. Like,
Well,
that's
and
not
part
how
of
it
the
works.
strategy, well, and part of the strategy also, I mean, and listen, I'm no military strategist, but it seems quite obvious, is you use the smaller ones to distract the Iron Dome so that maybe some of the bigger ones can get through.
Yeah,
If you just launch the bigger ones and the Iron Dome knocks them down, then we're taking out your
yeah,
best
because
stuff.
like one of the things is you launch a volley of rockets to where you know that basically the rocket pods will be emptied, because each Iron Dome launcher has 15 pods in it. So if you know
Right.
that you can get enough rockets in the air to basically empty those pods, cool. Second wave, big missiles, go.
Right. Right. And listen, you don't have to be some grand mill. You don't have to be Dwight Eisenhower planning Normandy to figure this out. This is basic. This is simple stuff. But again, when you are motivated, when you are controlled by your emotions, these kind of factual arguments don't hold any sway. That's why when I tell people, I try to teach them about when you're going on a live, I tell them, stop trying to convince the person in the box that you're right. You're not going to change their mind.
I just like
What you
making them
can
look
do,
dumb for the people in the comments.
right? I tell them, this is what I've been like trying to hammer home with people. Don't debate, educate. Don't debate, educate. You're not going to convince the people in the guest box that you're right, but you are going to inform people who are watching who might say, "Oh, I didn't know that." And then they'll go look at it. And when it's verified based on what you say, then you now have gained credibility
Mhm.
with that person. Now, you don't know it because they're not commenting, they're not in the guest
Yeah,
box, but
like
that's not the
I
point.
I've had people start referencing me for stuff and referencing my videos for stuff because I show like the sources and stuff and back stuff up and I educate people on it. It's really interesting to see how that has grown.
Yeah.
Um,
No, yeah, listen, and there's a,
we have 2 minutes, by the way, before our free time on this meeting runs out.
okay,
Do
that's perfect because I got to do
do you have a
laundry anyway.
closing
I gotta go.
statement before we both go on TikTok live and
Listen,
piss some people
listen,
off?
listen. It takes, what I tell people is, look, each one of us individually is so unimportant in the grand scheme of things. I have no grand illusions about who I am, my importance relative to the world. I am but one grain of sand on the beach. But what I tell people is the beach exists because of all the grains of sand together. So, me individually, I'm one grain of sand. But if we can all join together with the same front, unity,
Mhm.
arguments, facts, history, and do it in an engaging and entertaining way, that's how you build the beach, by stacking up or by putting together lots of grains of sand in one location. And so it's important. What I'm doing is important in the sense that it's showing other people how to do it. Am I changing the world? Am I changing minds? Probably not a lot, but I'm showing other people how to do it the way I'm doing it, and that helps in the long run.
Yeah.
You finished off.
Oh, yeah, we got less than a minute left, so I think we've had a productive conversation today. It's pretty much what we normally talk about, anyways, on these lives, but
Yeah.
in a more isolated space where we're not having people just yell racism or unalive the Jews. So hopefully
Well,
people learn, and I
it's
hope the
always nice.
takeaway.
It's always nice not. It's always nice to not hear "kill the Jews." That's always a good thing.
Hopefully the takeaway from this is people learn to be independent and actually just do their research and not think with emotion.
Right, and especially when you're not personally involved in a situation
Yeah,
where people are dying, and so taking one side or the other will be offensive to one group of people, you better make sure you're doing it based on facts and not just who you like better,
yep.
because that's not going to win you any friends, and it's not the right way to live.
Um. All right, so yeah, let me know what you guys think this should be called. I don't know. I'll put it in the comments for you guys to choose or whatever. If you guys like content, let me know. If you guys have a topic for us to talk about, let me know. I can bring on other guests. Heber Hammer's great. Let me know what you guys think about him. Please no racism or spouting off about the Jews in the comments, please.